Okay. Looks like the recording's going and the transcription. All right. So as discussed, we are here today to talk about the OTO Safety Action Plan, Destination Safe Streets. This is our needs assessment focus group. The purpose of this group is to understand various mobility needs of different users of the transportation system, whether you walk, bike, drive, take public transit. What are your safety concerns and challenges, and where do we see opportunities for this plan to help address and mitigate those challenges or safety needs? All right, so today we'll talk a little bit about Safe Streets and Roads for All, why we're here, what is a safe systems approach. We'll dive into the specifics of the OTO Safety Action Plan, share some input that we received from our community engagement opportunities in January. And then that's, like I mentioned earlier, we want to open it up for discussion. That's the whole point of this, is to really listen and learn from you as to what challenges and safety issues you face when you're traveling around the community. And then we'll close it out with next steps and ways that you can continue to be engaged in the process. So we might just skip through these polling questions. I think we can address all of these when we have our discussion prompts at the end. Okay, so why are we here? The goal of this specific project is to create a regional safety action plan for the Ozarks Transportation Organization Planning Area, as Natasha mentioned, a little bit larger than the Springfield metropolitan area, that enhances safety for all users. Ultimately, we want to prevent death and serious injuries on our roadways. Since 2020, roadway fatalities have been increasing, and specifically for vulnerable road users. Fatalities on urban roads are up 16%, pedestrian fatalities up 13%, bicycle fatalities up 5%, and speeding related fatalities up 5% as well. The trend is alarming and concerning, and it's something that cannot continue. And so the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant is one way that local agencies, metropolitan planning organizations can work to reverse this trend, head in the right direction. Some graphs on the screen here that I'll talk about. The first one is from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So this is roadway fatalities across the U.S. Motorists, as you can see, roadway fatalities and the large spike starting around 2019. And then there's another trend line that outlines the pedestrian fatalities also spiking around that same time, but even more concerning, spiking at a sharper rate than motorist fatalities. We'll get into vulnerable road users in a couple of slides, but this basically, when you look at this chart, you think that 7,342 lives in 2021 lost, all just people walking, trying to go somewhere, and it's really quite alarming. And then when we look at the OTO planning area, you can see similar trend lines increasing for all serious and fatal injuries, but then again, a sharper spike in bicycle and pedestrian fatal injuries, fatal and serious injury crashes. So since the goal of this project is to prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries, that's what we have on the chart here. So what is a vulnerable road user? A vulnerable road user is someone that has a much higher risk of being involved in a crash or traffic incident that seriously injures or kills them. Examples of these types of road users are elderly individuals, children, our unhoused population, those with special mobility needs, people who use English as a second language. We've got some images on the slide here. But the modes of people that are vulnerable road users are, people walking, using a wheelchair, biking, things like that. People that are not driving a car, and are a little bit more quote unquote unprotected, if you will, when navigating a transportation system that is rather car centric, not just a trend in Springfield, a trend across the United States, the way we've been doing transportation planning for the past 60-ish plus years. So vulnerable road users are also often the most underrepresented population when it comes to engagement and giving feedback on the planning and design process of our transportation networks. This continues to perpetuate the situation and highlights a need to make sure that we're being more intentional about planning and designing a roadway system that accommodates vulnerable road users and accounts for human error and mistake. So again, the purpose of today is to be able to hear from you all on your mobility challenges or any challenges from various groups or populations in the community that you may represent, and we will get into those discussion questions here in a little bit. Oh, wrong way. Okay, so what is Safe Streets and Roads for All? We thought it would be beneficial to share a little bit more about the program that is funding this planning opportunity for OTO. Established in 2022, Safe Streets and Roads for All is part of the current bipartisan infrastructure law and allocated $5 billion in planning and implementation funding to go towards enhancing roadway safety. This supports the United States Department of Transportation, USDOT's goal of reaching zero roadway deaths. The program funds regional, local, tribal initiatives through grants that work towards preventing serious deaths and injuries on our roadways. This specific project is a planning grant. There are other pots of money, such as a demonstration and supplemental planning grant, as well as implementation grants available. To be eligible for planning and demonstration grants, as well as implementation grants, an agency must have a completed safety action plan. I definitely want to highlight the importance of that because when this plan is completed and adopted for the OTO planning area, OTO, as well as other local agencies within the MPO planning area will be eligible to apply for either supplemental planning and demonstration grant funding, as well as implementation grant funding. The program has awarded funds for 2 years, and right now year 3 of funding is open. So once this plan is complete, there will still be 2 more years of potential funding for agencies to secure to go towards enhancing roadway safety. So this gets into a little bit more specifics, excuse me, about the types of grants and the types of eligible activities. This is a planning grant to develop a regional safety action plan. Supplemental planning activities include updates to safety plans, roadway safety audits, which you can identify a corridor potentially on a high injury network and go out and perform a roadway safety audit, follow-up analysis, additional stakeholder engagement, and potentially even education towards drivers, towards young drivers, safe routes to school type education, but ways to get people understanding what is a safe systems approach and how can we enhance roadway safety. Demonstration activities include more lean type implementation activities, feasibility studies, something that if we know there is an identified problem, how can we provide the evidence of the problem beforehand, implement some sort of interim or lean solution, and document that this solution worked to potentially secure further implementation funding for, let's say, a larger scale construction project. Implementation grants are going to be bigger projects. They have to be projects or strategies identified in a safety action plan, and these are, like I said, usually pretty high dollar amounts, major construction projects to rework potentially a problematic corridor or intersection. So, what is a safe systems approach? The safe systems approach is the guiding paradigm for US DOT to address roadway safety. It's a comprehensive approach that places emphasis on human error and mistakes, as well as human vulnerability. There's a focus on infrastructure, human behavior, responsible oversight of the vehicle and the transportation industry, as well as emergency response. The Safe Systems wheel is what's on the screen here, and on the next couple slides, I will walk through the inner components as well as the outer components. So the principles of a safe systems approach are that death and serious injury on our roadways is unacceptable. We are humans and we make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Responsibility is shared amongst all users of the transportation system. Safety is proactive, and that redundancy is critical. So the main thing to take away here is that as humans who are vulnerable and make mistakes, we need to build safety into our system so that if one person, if you make a mistake, it's not that one mistake is going to kill you or seriously injure you. We're building redundancy into the system to provide safe outcomes for people that potentially might make mistakes or be more vulnerable while they're traveling. The objectives of the safe systems approach are safer people, safer vehicles. So this is thinking about vehicle size too, and technology in vehicles. How can we make vehicles safer for not only the person operating the vehicle, but people traveling outside that the vehicle might encounter? Safer speeds, and what does that look like in terms of setting posted speed limits? Safer roads, so designing roads with all users in mind. And then post-crash care is another key element of the safe systems approach because the time it may take for emergency response to reach a crash or even get a victim to the treatment they need, a matter of minutes can really be the difference between life and death. So all of these are important components of the safe systems approach. So about the OTO plan, we'll get into some specifics about what's going on with this planning effort and where we're at today. The plan really kicked off in January of this year. As Lockmuir is working through some existing conditions analysis with OTO, mapping the high injury network, we did some initial community engagement. So we held 3 workshops, various times of day and evening, various locations within the Springfield planning area. We had pretty good turnout. There was a few news stories about the plan. So we basically just presented information about the plan, listened to people and what their concerns were, and we're able to document that as well as with an online survey and an online mapping tool. Right now, we're in the needs assessment portion. So we're trying to have some more specific conversations around, again, vulnerable road users and some various populations that might not have been able to attend the open house. That intentionality, again, of making sure that all voices are heard during this planning process. We'll then move into concept refinement, and Lockmuir will start looking at safety countermeasures to be included in the plan, which will result in a draft plan. And then some more engagement. Engagement will be continuing throughout. We'll be at some community events throughout the summer, planning a pop-up demonstration in the fall to showcase what some of these safety countermeasures could be. And then the final plan adoption is slated between October and November of 2024 by OTO's Board of Directors. So I do want to share about the community input that we've heard to date. We asked a series of questions on our online survey related to how people travel around the Springfield metropolitan area. We asked questions about comfortability while traveling. We asked questions about commute time. We asked questions about concerns. And so I'm going to get into some of that on the next couple of slides. On this slide, there's a series of 4 pie charts that outline the comfort level of individuals while walking, while bicycling, while using transit, and while driving. The drivers have the highest level of comfort by far. So about, over half, 54%, and 25% very comfortable, 54% comfortable. So almost 80% there are feeling pretty comfortable while they're driving around. Bicyclists have the lowest level of comfort. So 35% said they feel very uncomfortable. 38% said they feel uncomfortable. So again, right there, we're almost 80%, pretty much the inverse of those that are driving. Those that are biking feel very uncomfortable or uncomfortable. For people that are walking, between those that identified that they feel uncomfortable or very uncomfortable, around 50%, and that is pretty similar to those that are utilizing public transportation, with almost 50, a little over 50% identifying that they feel uncomfortable or very uncomfortable while traveling. That checks out pretty good too, because transit trips all start and end with some sort of walk or wheel to the transit stop. So it checks out that those two modes are very similar in terms of the comfort level that people experience while they're traveling around the Springfield area. We looked at commute time for people, and we were able to line up the commute time that participants reported with the mode of transportation they identify taking the most frequently. On the slide here, we have two bar charts that outline the commute time for drivers, as well as the commute time for transit users. The key takeaway on this slide is just the stark contrast in how long it takes someone to get somewhere in the region if they're traveling by car or if they're utilizing public transit. So a majority of the participants that indicated they drive as their primary mode of transportation are all mostly less than 30 minutes. Pretty much all of them are less than 60 minutes. For individuals that indicated public transit is their number one form of transportation, most are over 60 minutes, and nearly all of them are over 30 minutes. So this is again, a very stark contrast in terms of how people can get around Springfield. It puts people that rely on public transportation at a disadvantage and discourages those that may be able to utilize public transportation from taking it just by simply looking at the commute times and thinking about the convenience of traveling that way. The next series of slides walks through the concerns that people indicated they have while they're traveling. Again, were able to line up the concerns that people reported with their primary mode of transportation. This first slide indicates what pedestrians are concerned about. There's a slight difference in color on the screen between the light green and the dark green. So this again is a bar chart with light green and dark green for the responses. We did want to ask for people's concerns based on the type of road they're traveling on. So we broke the road type down into thoroughfares. So these again are thinking of major arterial roadways. They connect long distances, east, west, north, south, primary vehicular movers within the region, and then local streets. So this is a street that runs in front of your house. It's more about direct access to where you're going as opposed to serving as a major vehicular trip mover across the region. So concerns for pedestrians lined up pretty much the same, regardless of thoroughfare or local streets. The highest concerns were about sidewalks, limited places to cross the street, and dangerous driving behavior. So that's disconnected sidewalks, limited places to cross the street on foot, and then aggressive driving behavior. Where there was some difference between thoroughfares and local roads is sidewalk conditions, and then a higher concern over speeding on local streets. The input that we received from public transit users, again, thinking about back on that comfortability slide and the input lining up pretty similar with people that are on foot. Same thing here, a lot of similar concerns with people that identified as walking as their primary mode of transportation. Disconnected sidewalks, limited places to cross the street on foot, sidewalk conditions were the main things. On thoroughfares, the limited places to cross the street was a much higher concern. This seems to line up too, because if you get off at a bus stop on one side of the street, and let's say where you need to go is directly across from the bus stop, you may have to walk a good way out of your way to get to a signal or a safe crossing. Safety concerns for drivers. The top two are distracted driving and aggressive driving behavior, which indicates that motorists are actually most concerned about the way other motorists are traveling on the roadway. And there's less of a concern on infrastructure meant for people walking and biking. And then safety concerns for bicyclists, lack of bike lanes, disconnected sidewalks, and dangerous driving behavior. Also, yeah, aggressive driving, distracted driving, those are dangerous driving behavior. But bicyclists have to interact more with motorists, especially if they're traveling in the street. And so it also checks out there that they're a little bit more concerned about some of those driver behaviors, as we saw from the driver slide. Okay, so that was a lot of information that was covered, but again, we really wanted to get into the discussion topics. And this recording will be put on the OTO website, so you can always go back and listen to me if you are so inclined to listen again about safe systems and safe roads. Natasha, did you have anything you wanted to add before we jump into the discussion questions?
No, I think we're ready just to, get to the details of what's impacting people.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Okay, so there's quite a few questions on the slide here. I wanted to share them. I will read them all right now, and then we'll back up and we'll go through all of them. But just to give you a preview of the types of questions we'll be asking. First, we want to hear, are there specific transportation issues that you or the audience you're representing experiences that we should know about, or aspects that are helpful or should be more widespread? So things that are working well that you would like to see other places. And then we also want to know about important pieces of infrastructure to your audience, or to you, or to the individuals you feel like you're at this meeting representing, thinking about better connected sidewalks. At our in-person meeting, we heard a lot of discussion about audible pedestrian signals for people that have visual impairments. We want to hear about what that infrastructure is that would make your daily trip easier and safer. And then, are there times that you feel like you're not comfortably accommodated when you travel? We also want to know just about general safety concerns. And then any transportation related issues that you feel are overlooked when thinking about designing roadways for people that have similar mobility experiences as you, or any groups that you might be here representing. So I guess with that, we'll just kind of back it up to number one and open it up for thoughts on specific transportation issues that we should know about during this planning process.
Three sensors. Three, yes.
This is Janice here from the National Federation of the Blind. I have a couple more things to add for you guys.
Awesome.
All right, since our last meeting, I don't know if you have seen the new city utilities bus route, but the southeast part of town is being completely left off of the bus route system. So there's going to be more people out there walking, and without some of our streets not having decent sidewalks, it's going to be even more of an issue. Plus, our nearest bus stop is going to be like almost 2 miles away. So I don't know if you guys are looking at the sidewalks on this side of town or what. Because Republic Road, anything past Independence on Republic all the way over to Campbell has no service whatsoever. And anything on Fremont past Primrose has no service.
I guess I might let Natasha or Heidi jump in terms of like what, final plan recommendations might look like, and then the potential to discuss with CU Transit.
Yeah, so I'll just start. This is Natasha. As far as types of projects, we will be looking at things such as, pedestrian connections, including sidewalks, and also how that interfaces with transit. And so I think it'll be important as we look through, when we're identifying projects that are safety related, gaps are important, and definitely, looking at where gaps need to be filled in and how that relates to safety. That'll be something that comes up, and it'll be something we'll probably want to make a note of discussing later too, because with that transit system changing, some of the analysis that we're doing now as far as where crashes are in relation to transit, that may look different once that transit's, maybe rerouted. So that'll all be things that we'll make a note to consider as we move forward. Heidi, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think the best connection would be, for possible recommendations out of this plan, would be to identify where sidewalk gaps are and prioritize where they need to be filled within the community. That's the type of improvement that would best align with implementation funding, but also within the plan outlining how sidewalks and the transit system and how users need to get to their transit stops, how that relates, shouldn't be overlooked.
Okay. And also we'll be walking and down and all of a sudden the sidewalk will stop and it picks up on the opposite side of the street, but it's not an appropriate place to cross, like on Independence or, even here on Fremont, you have a gap and no sidewalk and it's on the other side of the street and you can't get across.
Yeah, we'll definitely make a note of that. And then, see, I'm sure you're aware, I'm wanting to double check the date, but City Utilities Transit is looking to host a, basically a public input for their routes and fares. And so,
It's May 1st.
May 1st. Yeah, I just couldn't, okay, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it's kind of an all day
Yeah.
event at the transit center.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So that's a great point. Specific transportation issues, it's transit, I guess we're going to kind of summarize it as transit connectivity to goods, services, basic daily needs, and then the sidewalk facilities to get even from where the public transit currently operates. Any other specific transportation issues that we want to talk about on this question?
I don't know if it's right at this question or where, but I do non-emergency medical transport and transport of people with special needs. And a constant complaint that I hear about when the bus comes up is the circle system instead of a north-south and more or less east-west, a grid system, and that it's way too hard to learn. And, that's been a topic for the 25 years I've been here. And it seems like the city is, committed to stay in a circling system. But, when to listen to all the users
Yep.
I transport, and having a parent who is blind and very good friends here, that it's very hard to learn. And as an occupational therapist, the learning of a circle system and the conflict that has in teaching for, memory and visual perception of the space, it's just very hard.
You want to add
And
anything?
and at some point, you know, I think we need to look at the people who are actually the primary users of this system, besides the non-driving or can't afford the car group. But it's constant complaints about it. And then on the sidewalk issue, I agree with the lady who just made the comments. As you really drive the streets of this area, I wonder why are there sidewalks split so far on like one side of the street and then they suddenly appear on the other side of the street? Like, how did that happen? Or what's the logic behind that? And again, for whatever your reason is for challenges in mobility, that is just really a dangerous situation.
I don't know if we can specifically speak to an exact rationale for, you know, the back and forth. I know as development occurs that a lot of times drives where the sidewalks go, and that development sometimes isn't consistent crossing the street. And so there's always an effort to at least make sure one side has sidewalk. But it is recognized that that creates additional, you know, issues for people when you have to cross the street just to be able to stay on the sidewalk. So we'll make sure
But
to
they
make a note
have
of that as well.
For the limited vision part of this group and those with memory issues, you know, there's not even a signage there to direct them, to let them know that it does continue on the other side of the street. And then like the prior person said, it's often in the middle of a block. And that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we don't care what side of the street it's on, just as long as it's consistent.
And that there's a signage that you can feel in your case to let you know what the story is for that block.
So that's kind of a good segue into specific pieces of infrastructure and especially wayfinding that's accessible for everybody and clearly can help people with disabilities navigate where they're going. And of course, connected sidewalks and compliant curb ramps. I think those are just based on what we were even started talking about in the first question. Would the two people on the phone or on the call agree with some of those as being pretty important infrastructure elements?
115, right?
Oh yeah, the curb access is horrible in this city. They're in places they're non-existent, and others they're at the wrong angle. You almost have to go out in the road to be able to use it, or it's full of grass where you can't use them.
No driving anyway.
So, you know, they're just not consistent, nor are they good and in good condition.
Correct. Correct.
But there's a big thank you for all the sidewalks that have had improvements done and repairs done over, you know, the big tree roots and stuff, making it even and safe. You know, we must have gotten a very sizable grant to do the number that have been improved around town.
Thanks. We're glad to see that, you know, what has been done is helping.
All right. The next thing we wanted to talk about, and I think we had some really good discussion, Janice, with you on this when we were in person, but specific instances when you feel like you cannot comfortably travel or you're not accommodated in a safe way when you are traveling. The specific instance I'm referencing that you shared with us was, for example, when traffic control is placed to alert drivers to a lane closure ahead. Oftentimes, the big sign like "road closed ahead" is placed in the sidewalk, or if there's construction going on and a sidewalk just ends. Those are great, not great situations, but situations that we should certainly document, because there are things that can be done to, mitigate the dangerous situation to vulnerable road users. For example, with a better traffic control plan that accounts for all users as opposed to just thinking about lane drops for motorists. I was just using that as an example to maybe spark some thoughts about other specific instances that we should be aware of. All right. Definitely want to give people time to reflect, but also don't want to put anyone on the spot. Okay, so the other thing that we just would like to open up discussion, I mean, in this week we can talk about anything, but we really also want to hear about general safety concerns. I have definitely heard this transit concern, and connectivity is definitely coming up as a major concern and issue. Any other big safety concerns?
Another one I listen to people complain about is the time they have to wait, and that might be what you include under connectivity, how much long they have to wait between the buses. And if they need to do a transfer, the length of time. It shouldn't be taking 90 minutes to go 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said before, the lack of shelter and the dangerous bus stops that we have, where they
I
just drop
agree.
you off over road
By a ditch.
by a ditch with a hill, going into a car, a lot with, trees and cars on it on the other side of the hill.
Or with the retail that you want to go to.
Yeah.
And does the driver tell you, that you're stepping out into the street or, at areas that are without a bus shelter?
Oh no, they don't say anything. You have a couple that know us and will, they'll want to know where we're getting off and stuff. But yeah, no, they don't. The only shelters that are in town is where there is transfers. So most of your bus stops do not have any shelter, nor do they have benches. We waited. Our bus the other day was 20 minutes late. So you're standing there on the sidewalk for 20 minutes waiting in the rain.
If you don't use a rollator, you need to use a rollator so you got a place to sit.
Yeah.
That, and I agree with you. It's and because the timing between each bus is so long, I don't have the patience to do it. And
Yeah.
I feel bad for my people who have to. And, I get calls to come rescue people from a bus stop because they can't keep waiting anymore. They don't have the endurance to keep standing.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for some of these people, and I'll go get them and just, to take them someplace to where they consider take them home.
Yeah.
or wherever they're.
Well, and so since you're out doing a lot of driving too, do you have any additional comments just on, the roadway safety aspect as well?
Having lived in a number of other big cities, the length, like when you are going to be exiting right, for instance, or left, your left turn lane coming to a stoplight, ours are really short compared to other major cities I've lived at, and I think that's a real detriment to the city because our population is growing and the number of people from outside of Springfield, everybody comes to Springfield for their city stuff, that those really need to be longer, especially along Glenstone, any street intersecting with Glenstone. Having them be like 3 and 4 cars long, that's not sufficient. We're building for the future, and it's really stupid to watch construction like at Glenstone or Battlefield and either National or Fremont, where it was done not that many years ago, and then it was being ripped out again. The same with the Campbell interchange in James River. It hadn't been that long, and it was being redone again. But it's like, it seems in this town, they do the modifications for today. They don't really look to the population growth that is happening. We're not doing into the future at all or much. And I think that should be looked at, because that's a lot of money. Removing the curbs that are built in, the turn lanes that are built in, and then moving things over. So you're moving everything. And that's a lot of money. And why not just do them longer and wider to begin with? And because we are becoming a big city, we're not just this little town. And I think the frame of reference needs to change in how people think. Many people who are around and that I know that are on different boards, they want Springfield to be small, but in that little and growing to medium, we're past that stage. And the infrastructure and services need to get with the program. And I think that's going to be, and I just really feel for the people who want to rely on the bus service in this town, and they can't because it is so crappy. And it's not usable. And that is really sad. They should be able to get to the primary medical centers without it taking so long. We build apartments out on West Mount Vernon, and part of the federal money acquisition is that there be bus service. Well, there was bus service. Then after the required time period that they offer it, then it goes down. Well, the ridership isn't there because of the timing of those services. It wasn't coinciding with when people go to work and when they come home. It didn't match. And people I transported out in that area for quite a while, constant complaints is, we were told that we were going to be able to use the bus, and we're not. So now they're using a lot of their income on transportation. That's not fair. The same thing with going up to Habitat for Humanity up by the zoo. Their bus transportation was taken away, and people we transported up there, they were stuck. Again, they couldn't get to work. They have to pay for transportation services to get to work. And it's no matter, and now the lady said that the southeast quarter, the transportation is being taken away. We don't have the east-west transportation on Republic Road. That's a big miss. Everybody who lives way south, I'm in that zone, is you are up and down Republic Road a lot. And there's not a bus that goes up and down Republic Road. Kind of sad. Kind of sad that you can't get efficiently to every medical center the primary in this town. And the insurance companies, you know, as well as that data is all connected of where people live and what plans and what do they need. And, you know, we just can't get them there, you know, effectively and cost effectively, you know, and I give a lot of super reduced service just because I know that they are stretched for income and I try to help them out. But it's like, there's lots in that pool, more than I can take care of, you know, on a semi-volunteer basis.
I kind of feel like the city thinks because we're on the southeast side of town in so-called richer part of town that we can afford to do the Uber and that we don't have to have the bus service, which is wrong.
I hear it every day.
No, I strongly hope that both of you plan on attending the May 1st meeting with city utilities, because we
Oh,
can,
yeah.
yeah, we can relay the information, but coming directly from you and people who have experienced the same things that you all have experienced will have a much stronger voice.
I've been dealing with them for 20 years. I have yet to have one person out of hundreds that I have referred for Access Express. And my background is an occupational therapist, and part of that is mental health. I have yet to have one person get accepted for Access Express. And in other cities I lived in, they all would be on. But not in this town.
You know, we're on Access Express, but you have to know 2 days ahead of time that you want to go somewheres. And, you know, that's kind of putting another disability to us because we can't just get up and go. I mean, if you want to go out and eat, do you plan it 2 and 3 days ahead of time and hope you can get on the Access Express on that day? No, a lot of times it's on the minute that you want to go somewhere. If you want to go to Walmart, you get up and go. We're going to have to plan it 2 days ahead of time now. Or walk. And how safe is walking for us?
Sidewalk.
Especially 2 miles, 2.5 miles. I mean, it's just not, it's a safety issue for us not to be able to get to a safe bus stop at a decent distance away from us and have to walk on these sidewalks that are broken. And, you know, like I said, the grass is growing over them and the exits are wrong. You have these driveways that go to nowhere and they're at a slant. So that gets you, if you're blind, that gets you disoriented. And a lot of times it will send you to the middle of the road or to the edge of the road where you're out in the middle of the road because of the leaning part of it. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, it's a safety thing. It's also just like a, you know, equitable thing that you have to walk 2 miles and the time that it even takes. And like you said, even the time that it takes to plan ahead is that just, it shouldn't be to, you know, access everyday goods and services, quality of life amenities. It shouldn't be so challenging to do.
And that's why I want you all to know that you're definitely being heard, and they are definitely, I'm seeing them taking notes, I'm taking notes so that all of this can be included. But, you know, again, continue to use the other resources. Even if it was 20 years ago, maybe we have other people who will see things from a different light with our elected officials. So continue to do that. And I know we will continue to capture your concerns so that they are definitely looked at when they're developing this plan. And if you can even encourage other people that you know, I'm assuming the online survey is still online, or I was on vacation, so I don't know.
Yeah. No, the first survey is not, but there'll be another opportunity for input.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So if you all can become advocates when that next one comes out to make sure you get more people to take it, again, the more individual input that we can get, it makes a stronger case for whatever plan they're developing.
Especially when we can show the commute times. We
Yeah.
have the graphs of people that identified as taking, people that reported public transit is my primary mode of transportation, and we can show that next to the inequities of travel time.
Yeah, public transit, minimum 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you work an 8-hour job, you might as well add 3 to 4 hours onto that.
Right. Yeah. So then it's like, I mean, at a certain point, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to travel 2 hours one way, work 8 hours, travel to. It's that no one
Yeah.
can sustain
And
that lifestyle very long.
And like she said, the loop system and the system they got, you can't learn it. Especially, it's just impossible to know unless you've been doing it for years and years. And then, but yeah, trying to figure out what bus goes where is impossible.
So, any other issues or things that you think are overlooked when, thinking about all users, especially with you traveling experiences like yours? Just definitely want to make sure we're capturing everything today.
Well, something that I've done a lot of reading on over the years is and visited. I serve a lot of the rural market. So the lady that's on this, that is beyond the first row, the Ozark Nixa Republic, the first tier. But when you're looking for how do we get people in that are wanting or needing to get in for whatever reason, that are now down in, let's say, the Sparta, and go over the Sparta to Highlandville Billings and do the second tier circle, because that's where a lot of development is happening. The farms are being sold. Those are all subdivision lands, or going to become subdivision lands. And we need to be planning for that. And, does this planning include, that tier? And how are we looking at meeting that? And if you read in National Transportation and some of there's another one that just escaped my brain right now, but national organizations, and how they are merging public and private partnerships to get people to collection points or / bus stops, but using companies like mine out in Timbuktu, because you can't afford to send people there, but that's where a number of us have workers, to bring them into where those bus stops are at the Ozark and Nixa and Republic and the first tier routes, but to help develop a more strong and consistent transportation, instead of just coming in 1 and 2 days a week to Springfield, because it's really hard to get appointments scheduled on a Tuesday only between 10 and 3, when that is, if you're relying on oats. I really think we need to spend some time looking at that and seeing what other rural / developing outreach communities, how they're problem solving it, because there's areas in the country where the systems are working really efficiently and very cost effectively. And, you know, that's another option.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing we might mention is having the street signs big enough and with block numbers on it so that we can, you know, most of our phones we can, you know, point towards the street sign and it will read it. But as little as they are, we have to be right on top of them for it to do that. And I don't know if you guys have heard about the Navland system, but we are working with the city of Springfield. We're doing a lot of their buildings, and I really think it could be implemented into the uh, street signs to tell people where they're at. You might look that up and study on that. And if you are interested in knowing more, just get a hold of me because I'm one of the contact people in the United States for Navland.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's a pretty cool system, that navigation system. The city of New York is using it in their subway system to let people know where they're at and to get off with it, where to get off at. But it's the future. And you guys, you know, might look at that too. That would help people get around.
Yeah.
And
I took
just be easier to do.
A proper block system.
Yeah, a proper block system would help a whole lot.
It really helps driving if we have the street signs with the names and numbers on the same side of the street, on the same corner. So there's some consistency, because I get really frustrated trying to find secondary and third level streets and things aren't marked, or I'm driving past it and I go, damn, it's over there this time. You know, and there's no place to really turn around or find the sign. But it's especially prevalent on straight across the north side. And I don't know how you deal with it being blind, but I know my friend Paul, who's blind, he has a big major frustration, and using even you know, the talking system, it's so frustrating for blind to get around.
We rely on several different apps, and depending on where you are and what you're trying to do, on what app we use. There's just a couple different ones where whether you're looking for just streets or whether you're looking for points of interest. So it depends on what we're doing, on what app we use.
All right. Any other thoughts? We can talk a little bit about next steps, but I definitely want to make sure we're capturing everything that you all wanted to share with us today. Okay. Excuse me. So, like I said, we will be at some community events this summer. We are still finalizing those, but definitely once we get that list finalized, we'll be able to get on OTO's website. And hopefully you can encourage other individuals to come stop by the table, learn more about the plan. We are going to do a pop-up demonstration in early August. So what that looks like is bringing some tactical materials out into the field and demonstrating what a potential countermeasure could look like. Let's say a mid-block crosswalk. I'm just, throwing something out there, nothing that has been identified yet, but something like a mid-block crosswalk with a protected refuge median, connecting a bus stop to a heavy commercial area on the other side of the street. So something like that, like what could this built infrastructure look like? And then the draft plan will be around the fall time, and then early fall, and then complete at that pop-up demonstration is when we'll be looking for some of that feedback too on the draft plan. And then once we can incorporate that feedback, the final plan would go to OTO's board of directors in October or November. Did you want to add anything, Natasha, to that?
No, I think that's a pretty good summary of what's to come.
Okay. Well, so grateful for your time. We really appreciate it. This recording will be available on OTO's website, so please share with other people that you interact with, other people that might be interested in it. More than happy to continue to answer any questions or take any feedback via email, via phone call, whatever works best for you when we get after this meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.